Welcome to the Money RX for CRNAs podcast. I'm your host, Brett Fellows, and today I'm introducing two entrepreneurs who have transformed CRNA education. Dill and Tanner Hulin co-founded Core Anesthesia, the leading educational platform that started as study conversations between CRNA students in 2019 and has grown into a million download phenomenon used by 75% of current students nationwide. Core Anesthesia now offers over 60 Class A credits through their mobile app, hosts an annual virtual conference, and serves as the go-to resource for students preparing for boards and CRNAs earning continuing education. And with that, I'd like to welcome Dill and Tanner Hulin to the podcast. Welcome, gentlemen.
Awesome. Thanks for having us, Brett.
Thanks, Brett. We're very, very honored and privileged to be here today.
So I don't know what was going on in 2019, 2020, obviously just before the pandemic, but I recently had Jenny Finnell from CRNA School Prep Academy, and there seemed to be something in the water those years about creating education pieces for CRNAs. And for you guys, it's very similar. Can you take us back to 2019 and how you guys met in CRNA school and the moment you realized that your study conversations could become something bigger than just getting yourselves through school?
Yeah, we really had no intention of it, Brett. I think that's the thing is we at the time, I think it just came from there wasn't a lot of resources out there. You know, there were a few different educational platforms that most people used, but in terms of like social media, I remember there was one CRNA that I followed on YouTube before I got into CRNA school, but it really wasn't there weren't like these influencers or these pages that you followed back and it feels silly because it's not that long ago that it was like that. And so
Yeah.
we had no vision. We didn't see anybody doing it. We didn't think like, oh, we should try to, do something like that, or we could, we have the space to be able to create something like that. We just started studying together, and that's where it started. As you mentioned, we were driving to and from clinicals. We were calling each other on the phone and saying, hey, let's, go over cardiac valves today, and let's just see how far we get on this, and let's make use of this hour drive that we, have to and from the hospitals. And then we'd get to finals and we'd be like, man, we really knew that stuff when we were studying it. Now we have to go back and try to relearn, a lot of the details that you forget. There's so much information coming at you during anesthesia school that you feel like you're forgetting as much as you're learning. And so we thought, well, why don't we just record those car conversations? That way we can passively listen to it when we knew it the best, and we can hear it in our own words of how we actually understood it. And then that will, cut down on our study time when it comes to finals, which it was fine. It was really terrible recording quality. We had no vision for doing anything with it, but our classmates heard about it and they're like, hey, do you mind emailing that to us? And I always joke, like, I don't know if you ever tried to email an audio file to somebody, but it's like, it never works out, and let alone trying to do that to 16 people. And so I found out you can put it on Spotify for free. And that's what we did. That's how we got it to our classmates. We said, hey, you can just, find us here on Spotify. It'll be uploaded and you can just listen that way. And Cole texts me and he's like, dude, somebody in Minnesota is listening to this. Somebody in Texas is listening to this. Somebody in Missouri is listening to this. And we were like, that's weird. Like, we've not told anybody about it. And I think, Cole, was that right before like we left for Christmas break that we had kind of like an idea? We were like, let's come back and talk about if we want to actually do something with this.
Yeah, it was. So we started school in January, and it was that Thanksgiving that we left. We're like, what's up? We both knew we wanted to do something business wise at some point with anesthesia, and we both came back and said, you know what? Let's just officially do this. Let's turn it into a podcast. But it took until February of a couple months later until we finally got around to actually like officially getting microphones, recording an episode, figuring out the logistics behind publishing an episode. And it would have been February 2020 when I believe, at the end of February 2020, we published our first episode. So you're talking mere days before COVID hit.
Sure.
And which, in all honesty, I think actually probably helped our case of having an online audio resource for people to help study when there was no in-class activities going on for those next few months. So it actually timed out to be perfect when we started it.
Yeah. And we named it Student Nurse Anesthesia Podcast because we thought like whatever anybody's going to search, they're going to search anesthesia, nurse, whatever. We want it to pop up. We always joke we're not businessmen. We started just like, found a problem, tried to fix it. And so we ordered our mics for, I think, $50 total. We had no recording equipment. We just recorded on Zoom. I edited everything in GarageBand on my Mac, which was extremely time intensive. But that's how I studied.
Yep.
Cole studied by putting together the outlines. He felt like he understood it. I studied by editing everything. By that time, I'd listened to it 3 or 4 times, so I felt like I understood it. And so it really streamlined our. People always say, "How did you guys do that while you were in school?" And I felt like it actually streamlined our studying because that's
Sure.
how we were studying. It's become more labor intensive, honestly, since graduation, and now taking time out of our schedules to
Yeah.
do it. But our logo cost us $4 to make. We just went online and found it somewhere that could make it,
Yep.
and we just started doing it. I remember we cheers. You FaceTime me, Cole, when we had 100 people listen, and we were like, "This is insane! Well, 100 people have listened to
It's
this,"
crazy.
And so it really,
Gotta go back to the logo part you just mentioned before we move on. So, Brett, when we first went to make a logo online, I mean, it was through some online
Like
software.
99 designs or
Yeah,
something.
and
Yeah.
we basically just gave them a rough idea of what we were thinking, and we originally were thinking the view of a patient laying on the table, and there's a mask coming down on top of them. That was our original view. So we get it back, and we're like, "This is perfect." We show it to our wives, and they're like, "That's an avocado." It literally was a picture of an avocado, basically, but like that
Nice.
was gonna be our original logo, and thankfully, our beautiful wives convinced us otherwise, and we switched to the logo that we have today. But it would have been a completely different trajectory if we'd gone with that avocado logo to start.
Love it. That's great. And then kind of switching to the business development, I think you shared that maybe you started when you started actually as a business, maybe it was $5 a month or something along those lines. How did you think about pricing your content with no business background?
Yeah, so that was the interesting part. It would have been probably 6 months into doing this. So I mean, yeah, realistically, we're probably now looking into the fall of 2020, and we realized, hey, this is not just our classmates listening. As Tanner said, we had cracked over 100 different people that were our audience. It was growing by the day. And we looked at each other and said, hey, if people are using this, we're broke in anesthesia school. Like, let's turn this into some sort of financial income stream for us. And at the time, we were trying to figure out, how do you do that? How do you turn a podcast into something that's generating income? And I remember when we had first started it, people had told me, oh, there's so much money in podcast. But I couldn't figure out where that money was at. Like, how do you make money off of a podcast? I'm doing it. I
Sure.
don't see any money coming in. But so we found out that you could go on and make a separate RSS code and make a separate podcast that was your premium version. So we'd have our free stream that people would go on, they'd see all our episodes, and then if we gave them a code, they could put it in and it would unlock this hidden separate list of episodes that they could then access. And so we sold that through a website called patreon.com, and we decided, well,
Yeah.
what would be worth it for people. And at the time, getting through school is your primary goal, your priority at that time for any type of student going through anesthesia school. But we also knew that students are broke. I mean, we were the poorest we've ever been in our life. And so we just settled on $4.99 a month. We just thought, the price of a coffee. I mean, we're all getting coffees at that
Mm,
point. What's one more coffee for the entire month if
sure.
you get through school? And that's where it started. I remember we priced it $4.99 for a student, and we thought if any CRNA wants to listen to us and help give back, they're wealthier than us. Let's do it at $7.99. At the time, I thought that was
Uh-huh.
a big price, $7.99 a
Uh-huh.
month, and it was fun. I'm not gonna lie. I'd be sitting in the classroom and I'd get a notification that, hey, you have a new subscriber, and to see the passive income start to roll in month over month, it made me realize how much of an entrepreneur I actually am that I didn't know that I was
Yeah.
until that point.
That's really cool. So, from that point, you've had all that business growth over these years. What would you tell a younger Cole or Tanner back in 2019, knowing what you know today?
a great question. I feel like I need like 5 minutes to think about that before I jump right into it. But I think that with anything, there just has to be value. And so I think that you get really hung up on the details of pricing or how you're going to, disseminate that to everybody. And ultimately, if you have something that's valuable, then those details will take care of themselves. And I think we spent a lot of time trying to really figure out the details before we took the next step forward. And I think there's two sides of it. One is when you make a step, you're probably inevitably going to have to go back and make a correction step down the road. Like you're going to have to go back and with any path forward, it's not going to be perfect the first time. and you're going to have to go back and correct this, or we launched this new thing on the app but it really didn't have the infrastructure to handle it, and so now we have to go back and fix those things. But I think the fear of making sure it's absolutely perfect holds back so many people from just taking the next step and just moving into it. And it's okay if it's not perfect, it's okay it's not pretty, you just keep solving the next problem that keeps coming up. And so I think that there's a balance there. I think for sometimes we felt a little paralyzed making decisions because we felt like that we're new to this. We don't have really a roadmap. We don't have really any advisors that could help us that have already been in this space to help us make those next steps. So sometimes we were a little slow making decisions. And other times I was really proud of us for just jumping in and doing things. And of course it wasn't perfect. And you get to the next problem and you're like, if we would have thought about X, Y, or Z, we could have solved that before we're here. Now we're having to double back and go through things. But I think just take the step. Like if there's something that interests you, something that you think could potentially be a solution to a problem that you're seeing. I mean, we had no vision for it. We just were trying to help Cole and Tanner get through school. And when you know it, what helped Cole and Tanner has helped, thousands and thousands and thousands of other people get through school as well. We had somebody come up to us at our last conference and they literally brought us a copy of their diploma. And they were like, I wanted to give you this because I feel like you earned this just as much as we did. And we were like, oh man, dude, that was really meaningful. And I think those are the moments where sometimes you think selfishly about like, okay, I'm just trying to solve this problem for myself. But what you don't realize is that there's so many other people that are just in that same position, same boat, and have the same needs that you do. And just solving that problem is going to be probably more impactful than you might think.
Right. And was it all just incoming traffic the whole time, or were there actual metrics or things that you guys were paying attention to that you're like, oh my God, this thing really is working?
Yeah, I think that's the part of what excited me is I found that I loved tracking where we had listeners, if they were in our country, were they international, what cities they were in, what states they were in, where are the people that know about us. And we used, again, through Patreon, where we used our paid subscription for their RSS code, but we also used Buzzsprout, where we published all of our audio files to, and then Buzzsprout would take that audio file and distribute it to all the major podcast platforms.
Yep.
Buzzsprout would give us statistics and you could break down everything that you wanted to about it. And at first we were just excited just to see that people were listening to us. I mean, again, when we started this, it was not a goal to reach X amount of followers by this date. That wasn't our first intended goal. Our goal was simply, can Tanner and Cole get through school by making these episodes? And at the time, you spent so much time driving in the car that I was searching for podcasts that I could listen to make me feel like I wasn't wasting time. And as Tanner alluded to, I mean, there was a gap there. There was a hole. We couldn't find anything that we needed. There were some podcasts, but not exactly what we were looking for. And so we created it and we filled that hole. And then to see it grow, then you start setting goals along the way. You start setting metrics. I think the hardest part, this kind of also goes back to your previous question. The hardest part for me was starting this business when we realized it was more than just, hey, this is a podcast platform. This could actually be a business. Then it became, well, how does this business grow? And we're two broke college students trying to provide for our families. I mean, I had 2 kids at the time going through school. My wife was trying to also balance working but taking care of them. And we also could use extra income. But the business needs income too. And that's one of the things that I was taught early on by my dad, who has his own business. He said the business has to give before it's going to receive, but you also need to fuel the business. And so if you're drawing funds off of your business to pay for your own livelihood, that business is going to fail. And so that became a struggle and a balance of how does 2 broke college students go through school but also growing this business. And that's the amazing thing is we were able to cash flow almost everything. Every time that we had a next goal that we wanted to do, we would allow the funds that were coming in, we would not pay ourselves, but we would push that right back in, infuse it into the business and reach the next goal that we wanted in terms of product development. So in terms of metrics themselves, I wish I could say we had all these detailed goals, but it was just simply, we just had a product goal. And whenever we had enough funds coming in, we would just pour it back in to make the next product. And it kept compounding and kept compounding and compounding. So it's been a blessing just to see how much it's grown in all honesty. But as Tanner said, I wish we would have done it a little more efficiently if we could go back and do it again. But we still got there nonetheless. And that's the important thing.
And did you guys form a partnership, or was it an S Corp and you were both 50% members, or what was the actual structure?
So we set up a partnership from the beginning,
Yeah.
50-50 owners. and set up an LLC. And again, I was very grateful. My dad had several businesses, so he was able to walk us through how to do that. It's
Yep.
interesting looking back. It seems so easy now, but at the time, it's
Right.
so confusing. You're like, how do I set up an
Yeah.
LLC? Like, what do I need legally? What do I not
Yeah.
need?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and so we just got a basic partnership agreement. We just found a template online, filled it out.
Yep.
It wasn't like we put in resources to start. It wasn't like we
Yep.
dropped 50K each into the business. It
Right.
was
Right.
literally just, hey, we're 50/50 owners, and let's just see how this thing goes. And that was kind of
Yeah.
what started it.
Love it. And then you quote unquote fast forward 6 years to May of 2025. And can you talk about the Archer Review partnership and acquisition? You have to get into numbers, but I mean, what does that do to infusion of capital per se, or what you think you can accomplish with Core Anesthesia moving forward?
Yeah, I mentioned earlier that it became more labor intensive actually getting out of school and trying to fit this in on top of our work schedules. And so Cole and I are both working full time, and then we're getting home. And then, I mean, typically our recording time, my son goes to bed around 10 p.m. And so usually that's when we record. I'll put my son to bed and then we record from 10 to 11 p.m. We're responding to emails as we're, between cases or what have you. And we're trying to set in, somebody needs to make a phone call or a business meeting about something, and so we need to squeeze that in our lunch break. Or it was for years. It's been burning the candle at both ends, and it's just been exhausting. And we've got to this point where we're extremely proud of what we've built, but also we were like, there's just no way we can continue doing what we're doing and it be viable for our families, for our personal lives, any of it. And so we started the conversation with them, and we, from our perspective, we're like, we want something that's going to be a launching point and allow us the ability to have more resources and more ability to really dive into this. And that has to look like us having some ability to step away from the OR. We both have young families, and so we've been told by multiple business people, you guys need to drop your time in the OR. You need to do this full time, which is great. But Cole and I are both chicken, and we have young families, and it's like, it's hard when you're making a CRNA salary to say, okay, I'm not going to do that, and I'm just going to go after this
Yeah.
quote unquote startup and just try to see what this becomes. And so for us, this was
Right.
just the answer to so many personal, angst, and also business angst. Just like we are feeling like we're kind of at the end of our rope in terms of what we have the ability to give to this product. And so it was just perfect timing when the conversation started with them. We love their brand, love the company, love everything that they stand for and what they've done, what they do for nurses. And so we were like, this just seems like it was meant to be. And so that was a long process building. I mean, it was probably over a year of back and forth discussing
Yeah.
terms and kind of what the future would look like. But the unified goal that we had was just like, this is the beginning for Core. Like, we've built this, we have recognition, we have all of these, followers that are really engaged with our product and have really enjoyed using our product. But now we have the resources, and Cole and I have the space, now that we've stepped back from the OR a little bit, to actually spend time creating and doing the things that we've dreamt of doing for so long. We just haven't had the either financial capital to do it, or we've not had the mental capital to
Yep.
be able to do it. So this has been really exciting. We feel really privileged to be in the spot we are, because we feel like we still have so much to give and so many opportunities to drive what Core looks like and what we can provide. But now having the resources to actually have the idea and go accomplish it. So many times Cole and I would have conversations and we'd be like, yeah, we're going to do this. This is what we need to do. This is great. But we had no feet to be able to actually go and do it. We just had these great ideas. Now we have both of those together, and it's been really exciting. We're only, about a half a year in, but just all the things that we're
Yep.
working on behind the scenes has been really fun.
And were Cole and Tanner always part of those conversations, or was there even an opportunity for you guys to exit completely? Or with
So that's the beautiful thing of what we were looking for is, as Tanner alluded to, we feel like we have so much more to give, and we feel like we've
Yeah.
created the business where I've alluded to the fact that we're on like a runway, we're on a plane, and we picked up speed, and our nose is just tipping up. Like, we're just about
Yep.
to just take off. And obviously some people would look at our business and say, well, you're already way in the air. But from what
Mhm.
we think of the potential that's still there, we feel like we're just at ground speed fast enough now to take off. And
Yeah.
we wanted someone that would be able to come along and partner with us that would want to keep us involved in the business. It wouldn't be just a
Mhm.
complete exit. I mean, I'd be lying if I said we didn't consider what it would look like to have a complete exit. But we also
Sure.
wanted to make sure that everything from a full picture standpoint would fit our desires and what our needs were. And so when you say, how do you evaluate your business? What approach did you do? I think that depends on the person that's trying to get rid of their business. What do you value? Is it all just
Yeah.
simply dollars and cents, or is there more to it than that? And as Tanner
Mhm.
alluded to, we wanted to continue to have our footprint in this company, but also have the opportunity now to join forces with somebody that could provide the resources that we would have to raise so much capital on our own to be able to provide. And what we love about Archer Review is it also is nursing driven, and we're
Okay.
taking somebody on a journey. I've always said our company started with students in anesthesia school, but
Mhm.
now we have an app that's all about, at the end goal, when you become a CRNA, how do you keep all your certification and CEUs, core
Mhm.
modules, etc. We have all that for you. And if you can capture somebody early on, hopefully they'll stay with you as they go throughout their journey. And I think Archer Review is a great fit for us because they start all the way back when somebody graduates high school and they start undergraduate RN. And they help people get all the way through their NCLEX. They help them when they're in the ICU get their CCRN certificate. And now that journey continues because we're a part of Archer Review now, that we have opportunities for them when they get into anesthesia school, when they get past
Gotcha.
anesthesia school. It's a complete seamless journey. And so it just made
Yeah.
sense for us that this is the company we're looking for. We can still be a part of it, but we also reap financial rewards because, as I alluded to, we've been feeding the company. We've been feeding it,
Mm.
feeding it. Our quote financial payout was when we have some sort of exit. But until that
Gotcha.
point, we're not paying ourselves. We could be working in the OR and make a lot more
A lot
if
more.
for
Yeah.
the hours
Yeah.
we put into this company. So the
Yeah.
reward from that was in some sort of exit. So all the pieces
Yeah.
from evaluation are more than just dollars and cents. It's what actually are
Mhm.
you looking for, what fits your lifestyle the best, and this acquisition met that match on multiple cylinders.
Mhm. And you mentioned, Cole, you haven't felt like you've even taken off from the runway yet. So if you guys look 3 years down the road, what has to have happened for you guys to feel happy with your progress with core anesthesia? What's up next?
I think the big thing is you mentioned in your intro, like we have over 3/4 of the students that use us and that listen to us and subscribe to it. So we're at our last conference, we took some program directors out to dinner and we are just asking kind of where their pain points were, what they are feeling from an education standpoint. And most of the program directors hadn't even heard of us. And so we were able to pull up
No.
their student base and show them. So the lowest number of listeners with their students was 80%. So we're like, you've not heard of
Yep.
us, but on the lowest end, 80% of your residents are using us for your education. So that's what we're missing
Yep.
is we have a huge, really great stronghold with the residents. Even program directors are more in the know, but they still are kind of unfamiliar with what we offer. And then CRNAs, especially, like you look at CRNAs, they really haven't heard about us. When I talk to coworkers, I talk to other people about what we have to offer, they're like, oh my goodness, I can't believe this exists. Like, why
Mm.
am I doing my CEUs this way? I didn't even know this was available through a podcast platform and an app that I can just take my CEUs while I'm going grocery shopping or doing whatever else and make it fit
Yep.
into your life. And so that's where the potential for our company really looks, exciting is when we're like, okay, we've got a great stronghold. And like Cole said, those people, they already have started to transition to CRNA and use us for their CEUs. But as more CRNAs find out about us, if you look at our reviews with CRNAs, we have so many CRNAs will just email us and they'll be like, thank you, thank you, thank you. This has made my CEU process so much better than it ever has been before. I can't believe I didn't know about this. And as you start to see that start to snowball and those people tell their colleagues and that continues to move forward, that's where it gets really, really exciting for us in terms of company growth. I think the other thing for the residents is we've in the past, we've offered podcasts, we've offered some questions, we've offered these PDFs that they can download on the app, we've offered some videos, but now expanding our resources for the residents, we've got a lot more things rolling out for them that when they get on the app, our mission from the beginning is how do we make anesthesia education accessible? So we do that from a financial standpoint, obviously, but we do that from a approachability standpoint where you can access us in between cases, you can access us in the car, you can access us again when you're walking your dog, whatever that looks like. You're not having to sit at a desk, read through a textbook, or sit in front of a computer and click through modules. You can be learning
Yep.
anesthesia, wherever. And so now,
Yep.
as we start to build in more and more of those tools to allow them to, approach the anesthesia education from different places with the resources of Archer, we have just some really, really exciting things that we're going to be rolling out for the residents. And I think that's the two kind of tiered idea for where we really take off, strengthening the SRNA education that we already have a pretty great foothold in, but then also just getting some more relevance in the CRNA world.
Nice. That's great. After 25 years of being a financial planner, I would say I'm 98% a marriage counselor. And you guys have expressed, I think I heard or read that you guys mentioned a partnership is like being married to one another. So, how did you guys in the past or even present, how do you handle the business making decisions together? How do you split up roles? That's not easy.
Not
Yeah, it's
easy.
it's definitely it's definitely been a journey. I mean, just like any marriage or any type of relationship is a journey. Anytime you're in a partnership, you have to figure out how do you work well together, where are your strengths, where are your weaknesses. You have to have open communication with each other. There are times when each of us along our 6-year journey have had different lifestyle events happen where we need to take a step back of pushing as fast as what we're pushing with the business, and the other one has had to pick up the slack, and that's gone both ways. And from that stance, it really is so much of a marriage because you have to be able to show mercy to each other, show grace to each other, but also have times where there's loving, constructive feedback and discipline and things that you do to help each other grow successfully. But I think one of the most primary things when it comes to using the marriage analogy is you want to find somebody that you're equally yoked with before you jump into a relationship. You want to make sure you're on the same page with a lot of issues. That's just going to set your marriage up for success. The same is true for anybody looking at going into a partnership. Tanner and I really had to look at, okay, what are our goals? What's our priorities? Where do we stand in terms of this compared to family life, compared to different extracurriculars that we do? Where do we want to see this in 5 years? And we had to have those conversations. And
Mhm.
thankfully, we were very similar on a lot of those. And that set up our relationship for success. I don't think our company would have grown near as much of what it has if we didn't have those conversations early on and decide, okay, are we on the same page with this? And if so, we now have this conversation to look back upon when one of us is maybe detouring from that to say, hey, this is our original communication. Where are we gone from there? And so, from that standpoint, it really is a relationship. It's very similar to a marriage when you have just a two-person partnership.
Yeah.
You mentioned your dad calls kind of a mentor. Did you guys get a business coach or, I mean, you guys were still so young. How did you learn this? Did you study EOS or do you meet every 90 days to strategic plan? I'm always fascinated with the behind the scenes of it.
I wish we had a really great answer for you. I really do. I wish we had like, set meetings, and it's part of why, Cole and I work. And, Cole is very attention to detail. He'll respond to your email within 30 seconds that you send it over. He's going to have everything, every T crossed, I dotted. I'm more of like, yeah, let's figure out the feel of this platform. Let's figure out how the editing is going to work. Let's, handle more of the social media side of things. But we have
Mhm.
very like, it feels like yin yang roles where it's like we're complement each other in different things that we do. But in terms of like actually business coaching or getting an idea of where we're going, I think it just kind of organically happens. We call each other all the time. Every day we're talking to each other. We're texting and we're calling.
Mhm.
It feels like if I have a spare 20 minutes in the car and I know his schedule, he knows my schedule. If I know he's free, I'm gonna call him. He's gonna call me, and we're just gonna talk about whatever project we're working on. And that inevitably, it was funny, we were driving to Nashville for the national conference. I don't know how long that conversation was, Cole. I just called you because I knew you were driving at the same time, but it was hours of us just talking. We knew we were going to see each other in 4 hours anyways, but that
Right.
turned into like more of a kind of future goal driven discussion. And then we also
Uh-huh.
level set with, hey, how are things going with family? Like, does this fit into your schedule? Is this, because we always said from the beginning, like, we're trying to get through anesthesia school first. So if this business is affecting your ability to get through anesthesia school, it's a hard stop. There's no space for taking this on if we're not going to get through school. We've also said the same thing about family, where it's like that this whole thing is supposed to be beneficial for us, beneficial for our families, beneficial for our life goals. If it's not accomplishing that, if it's causing stress or strain in areas that we're not willing to have stress or strain from it, then it's again hard stop. Like it's not worth it. And so we've had these conversations of, okay, in a business will transition from initially it feels like you need to say yes to everything because you're trying to get your name out there, you're trying to get your footprint out there. And then it starts to gradually change into, okay, now we need to learn how to start saying no to things and trying to protect our time, trying to protect the company that we keep, not because we want to be exclusive, but simply just because you can't give everything to everyone all the time and still have that time for yourself, for your family. And so that conversation was really, really good. I felt like we were able to kind of hone in on, okay, what does this look like for us? What does it look like moving forward? Is it working? Is it not working? And to your point of like, when we have those discussions, I feel like we just kind of organically have them throughout the year where we'll just say, hey, how are things going? And we'll just kind of get into it. I remember specifically, you talk about business relationships. Like I had my son in 2022, October 2022. And we were in Arizona at the time. There's a lot of things going on. I just wasn't able to be present for the business. And there's no like end date for that. It just, I was doing my best to kind of be involved and do different things. But I told Cole, like, things are not going well for us. Like, we're just taking a lot of time having our son and taking a lot of my attention. And, he was open to that. He was taking on more roles. But again, there was really no like end of that. It just kind of kept bleeding and bleeding on. And I remember Cole called me one time and he's like, hey, we just need to talk about like redefining our roles again, making sure that like I've got my plate, you've got your plate. And it was a great conversation because it was like, Cole needed to say some things I needed to hear as in terms of like, hey, this is things I need you to pick back up. If you're not able to, we need to have a conversation about what that looks like moving forward. And I think those are like really helpful and healthy conversations that you just have to have in a partnership. We always say that both of us would have quit on this way long ago had we been doing it solo. The ability to have somebody else to pick up slack for you is great, but that also can breed into, disdain or resentment if you feel like you're always on the opposite side of like, I'm giving, and this person's not, pulling their share. So having the ability to say to the other person, hey, you need to pick it up here, you need to do this, I feel like has been really healthy and helpful for us, keeping the main thing and just keep on moving forward together.
I will say before you jump on to the next section too, to follow up on that, we did get a business coach probably for the last year and a half. It was way too long before we finally got somebody. Thankfully, we were able to find, through a godsend, somebody that understood the anesthesia space. His daughter was graduating anesthesia school, but was primarily business. And he was able to come in unbiased, but able to help us from a business perspective. And that helped us leaps and bounds with the acquisition process with Archer, just to be able to have him, have his knowledge, have his support. I wish we would have brought him on way sooner than what we did. But yes, we did eventually, yes, Brett did find somebody, and we still follow back with him even now. But yeah, for anybody starting a business, do that way sooner than what we did. That is a mistake that we did.
Yeah. Was there any one thing that you could pinpoint that you learned or took away from working with the business coach? Was it thinking about your thinking or thinking bigger or
I think
thinking more strategically?
Inevitably, whenever you have your hands so deep in a project, you tend to get blinded to certain things that you want to see from that project. And while you want to be excited and you want to be optimistic about what you have, it's very healthy to have somebody that's unbiased come in, analyze your business. Where are things running efficiently? Where are things not running efficiently? Maybe you have gaps here. Maybe you need legal coverage in this area that you didn't have before. And having a fresh pair of eyes and somebody that knows business and knows things that can happen and has been through things before, which is very, very helpful to have. But then in a very tangible sense, this was right around the time we started having conversations with Archer and getting acquired by them. And he had gone through multiple acquisitions before. And so to talk to him, what's right to ask for? What's normal? What's not normal? Where do you push? Where do you give leeway for? And that was very, very helpful to have somebody that understood that space. Because as you've alluded to, Tanner and we're brand new into the business world and we're young. Like, we don't have this type of experience. And the last thing we wanted to do was get ran over with an acquisition process and regret things in the long run. And so that was very, very helpful to have him for that process.
Yeah, that's great. All right. In the spirit of your time, Cole, I'll just do one more question for you. Let's say, based on this journey from talking in cars and recording it to becoming entrepreneurs and having the acquisition, what might be the most important financial advice that you'd give to CRNAs today about building wealth just beyond their clinical income?
Great question. Something that I've learned along the way was primarily through the network of people that I've interacted with in the anesthesia space. I've surrounded myself with people that are financially inclined, let's say, to grow wealth, and I've taken a lot of advice from them. And if I had to summarize in like one phrase, what it would be is, when so many CRNAs graduate school, it's very easy to just jump into that next pay grade, that next level. And it's because at nature, we're consumers. We're consumers at nature. So to summarize in one phrase, it was I want my mindset to be that of an investor, not a consumer. And the moment I graduated, my wife and I sat down and we said, okay, we're not just going to live all of a sudden, boom, several $100,000 a year more than what we're currently making. I mean, we're not even making anything right now. We're negative
Yeah.
$50,000
Yeah.
dollars a year. And to go with that big of a jump, Tanner says this all the time. You're never going to have, rarely ever going to have in your life that big of a financial jump from a yearly standpoint of when you go from anesthesia school to working as a CRNA. And I see so many CRNAs do this where they graduate and they just adapt to that lifestyle. And because they're a consumer by nature. So their credit card statements are just bigger amount, but they're not gaining anywhere from a wealth standpoint. And so my mindset has really been, how do I use my money I'm making to make money for me? And before that point,
Yeah.
I'd never been in a position to do that. But now that I have this much cash flow coming in, I'm able to take bigger risk. I'm able to do things because I know I have cash flow coming in every 2 weeks from a paycheck that I never would have had before. And I've turned that mindset around to letting my money work for me. And already I've seen it just completely change the trajectory of my life from a financial standpoint.
Yeah, love it. Thank you for sharing that. And Tanner, I wanted to say my last for you. I know you guys are really excited with your partnership with Global Blade 3D. Could you talk about that, the nonprofit giveaway that you guys are sponsoring?
Yeah, I love it. Thanks for bringing that up. So for this last quarter of 2025, we're going to be donating 10% of all of our proceeds to Global Blade 3D. So these are two SRNAs that have done this for their DNP project, but they basically figured out how to create 3D printed video glide scopes. And so they've, normally this would cost thousands and thousands of dollars. They figured out how to print it for, basically $12 for the whole device that they have created. And this is a nonprofit they've started so they can send these blades to underserved communities all around the world, places that never would have access to this type of equipment. I'll share one quick story. There was a patient that came in respiratory distress, had a large goiter on their neck, wouldn't have been able to, trach this patient. It would have been a very, very difficult intubation, and very unlikely they would have been able to intubate this patient with traditional methods. They had sent this video laryngoscope over a week prior. They were able to intubate this patient first pass attempt, absolutely no issues. We're able to manage this patient and send him on his way. And so literally this device is saving lives in places around the world that, again, would never have access to the type of equipment that we have here in the States. So it's, again, nonprofit that we learned about their product when we were in Nashville at the annual Congress, and we were like, we just need to get CRNAs behind this. So, and a lot of times people have CME money that comes in that is left over at the end of the year. We have our package that is good for a year. So even if you don't need, CEs this year, you can use our package next year if you purchase it this year. But again, 10% of everything we sell in Q4, we're going to be donating to this Global Blade 3D initiative. And fantastic project, fantastic thing that they're doing. And we just are really privileged to be a part of it. So if you are interested in donating or interested in partnering with us, make sure you go to our website, coreanesthesia.com. You can purchase your CEUs there. And again, we'll be giving away 10% of that.
Love it. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you both for being on this episode of Money RX for CRNA's podcast. And we, of course, will have links in the show notes to everything Core Anesthesia. But Tanner and Cole, thank you so much for being on this episode today.
Thank you so much for having us. It was a great time.
Appreciate you.
You guys have a great day.
This podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only. It should not be relied upon as a basis for investment decisions. This podcast does not engage in rendering legal, financial, or other professional services.